Welcome or welcome back to Trail and Ultra Running Training. My name is Will Franz. I am a personal trainer, strength coach, running coach, and the whole goal of this podcast is to help provide more free training advice so you can train well, stay safe, and just have more fun out on the trails and do the thing that we love to do. And if you like this information, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe or leave a rating or review or whatever you can do to share it with someone else so that we spread good information and good training information out there in the sea of nonsense that is the internet. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about a question that I get a lot, both from people I coach and from just internet DMs, be it Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And it is some variety of, why am I so hungry? Or is it normal to be this hungry during training? Or should I really be eating this much for multiple days after my long run? There's also the other end of like, I'm just not hungry. I know I should be eating more, but I can't seem to make it happen. But all of these fall under the umbrella of, this seems like a lot of food. Is this normal? And yes, it very likely is. Training for an ultra results in you burning a ton of calories on a fairly regular basis, even if it's primarily during like a long run weekend and then like a lengthy mid run or speed workout or something in the middle of your day, it is fairly normal to be hungry and fairly normal to need an excess amount of calories from what you might have done prior to training for this sport, even if you were a runner at some shorter distances. So let's use me as an example, because I know these numbers pretty well. So if I'm like 170-ish pounds and I run 20 miles with like 4,000 feet of gain, which is pretty normal for runs around here, I'm going to burn about 3,500 calories on that run. Let's say I eat 2,500-ish on a normal day. That means I would need to eat 6,000 calories that day to be at maintenance. It's not quite right, because obviously some of the burn that would happen during my normal day happens during the time of that run. So let's call it 5, just to be polite. Anyway, it's likely not going to happen. That's a lot, even for me, who loves to eat and like struggles with some binge eating things. It's still a lot, but there's also just a time factor. So let's say I fuel that run appropriately, and that would involve like 300-ish grams of carbs. If you don't know how I got to that, I've done a couple podcasts on it. Basically, you burn a like 1 calorie per kilogram of body weight per kilometer of travel. And a vertical kilometer is worth 10 flat kilometers. I don't want to do all that math every time, so I've made a spreadsheet to do it for me. And for you, it's free. I'll include the link in the show notes. It's also on my website, or you can reach out and I can send it to you directly. It's inside the How to Fuel Your Next Ultramarathon guide. Anyway, 300 grams of carbs. That's 1,200 calories, because there's 4 calories per grams of carbohydrate. So even if I fueled my training appropriately, that's still like 3,800 to 4,800 calories throughout the rest of the day. And assuming I spent 4 to 5 hours to go that 20 miles, which is pretty realistic for me, especially with 4,000 feet of gain, that's just not a lot of time to eat that much food, especially if I'm making any effort at all to get some plants and proteins and micronutrients and fiber, etc., and not just get all of my calories from cake. Because yes, calories matter when it comes to recovery, but protein and fiber and micronutrients are a very close second. So I'm going to try not to get all of my calories from cake and pizza, even if I'm hungry and had a big day, right? So at the end of a big training day, even if I do all of the things right, and I prioritized and I made breakfast and I had a good dinner and I fueled appropriately, I'm still very likely going to be in a decent deficit, which means I will still need to eat a little more than normal, whatever that means for me or for you or whoever, for a day or two afterwards in order to come back from that deficit. Now, if we're doing a big back-to-back, like we will often see in ultra running training, let's see, we did like a 20 and then a 15, or even like a camp style weekend, if you're training for 100 or a 200 miler, then we're just adding to that deficit problem, because it's not just like its entire thing resets every time you sleep. If that were the case, then nobody would ever have issues with weight ever, be it overweight or underweight. If we just reset our calorie allotment every day, then it would not add up. All of this matters in terms of averages. Just like one run can't make or break your entire training cycle, one day of food can't make or break your entire overall diet, right? So if you create a massive deficit, then just return to your status quo, then that is going to be a deficit for the week. Same if you create a massive caloric surplus of 8,000 calories and then eat fairly on point the rest of the week, it can go the other direction. So if we just keep adding to the deficit, we keep digging the hole deeper. And this is why a lot of ultra runners struggle with food. Yes, there's a lot of crossover between eating disorders and disordered eating and the endurance community, because all of those things have been shown to be very dopamine driven. So it makes sense that there is a lot of crossover there. But it's also just a problem of logistics. If I run a 50-mile weekend, that's probably near 8,000 calories. And then I need to come back from that. And if I'm busy or I forget to eat and don't plan my food and don't make it easy for myself, or I choose to take care of my dog and take him for a longer walk over my lunch break and then I don't end up eating lunch, this might happen more often than I'd like to admit. Well, that is why we end up in this massive deficit. And this is why we're hungry all the time. And there's a lot more I could say about this whole food thing, but I really just wanted to point out that this is normal and it makes sense. And it is to some degree just a side effect of a sport that requires a lot of activity to train appropriately and a lot of time. And even if you fuel your runs appropriately with carbs and whatever, we're still very likely going to end up in a big deficit at the end of a big training day. And it is really normal and probably necessary for almost everyone to almost have to claw your way out of that for 2 or 3 days afterwards, so that by the time we get to our next big training day, we're at something resembling the status quo. Now, there's a lot more I could say on the entire food thing. And a few weeks ago, I said I was going to do a podcast on practical nutrition recommendations, and then I fell into a rabbit hole of making a better resource for everyone listening to this, and I wanted to finish this before I did the podcast. Well, that is done. So in the next week, I'm actually going to do an episode on basic nutrition. But for now, I just want to leave it at you're hungry because you're training a lot, and it's super normal. And even if you aren't very hungry, you probably need to eat a lot of food in order to recover appropriately. Some of us don't have what we might call normal hunger signals. I certainly don't, for many reasons. And some of them past diet choices, some of them lifestyle things, some of them just planning, whatever. But you're hungry because you're training a lot. And even if you're not hungry, if you're training a lot, you probably need to eat a lot. And if we do not take care of ourselves, and this is why we end up with injuries or under-recovered or not sleeping well or all of these things. We're probably not classically overtrained, but whether we're overtrained or under-recovered, the outcome is the same. We end up hurt, we end up with problems, we end up with whatever. So plan your food. Just like we plan our training, we also need to plan our recovery, because we do not get better during training. We get better when we recover and adapt from that training. It is super normal to eat a lot while training for an ultra. So eat. And this is not just a message for everyone listening to this. It is also a message for myself. I have definitely been struggling with this lately as I've increased my training volume and have not taken the required steps to increase my food. And I feel run down a lot. And it's just hard. And for anybody else out there, with you. So it's normal. Eat. Take the steps you need to make sure you recover well, so you can get the most out of the training and the most out of the work you put in. Right. I hope this was helpful, and have a great time out on the trails. Thank you again for listening to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Just a reminder, nothing you hear on this podcast is medical advice, and you should always speak with a medical professional before making changes to your training or your nutrition. If you enjoyed the podcast or found it helpful, please leave a rating or review. It tells the algorithm robots that people like it, and that means more people will hear it. Or even better, just share it with someone who you think would benefit. If you prefer a video version, head to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Group on Facebook, or check out the Mountain Goat Endurance Coaching YouTube channel. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great next run.